Yes.
It's up to you.
All right. I'd like to call to order the work session for the Metro Council on March 5th, 2024. Connor, will you please call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Councilor Rosenthal.
Present.
Councilor Lewis.
Here.
Councilor Simpson.
Good morning, Present.
Good morning. Councilor Nolan.
Present.
Councilor Wong. Present. Councilor Gonzalez.
Present virtually.
And President Peterson.
Here, thank you. All right. Before we begin our agenda items, can we please play the safety video for in-person attendees?
I'm Micah Reese, and I'm the dive safety officer here at the Oregon Zoo. And safety is a big part of my job. Some of the things we consider here is diver safety. I'm out here at the Oregon Zoo, and you're at the Metro Regional Center. The council chamber is located on the 3rd floor of this building. In the event of fire or fire alarm, please exit through the door in the northeast corner of the room, go down the steps to the 2nd floor, and exit through the main entrance by the reception desk and gather in the courtyard outside the entrance. In the event of a medical or fire emergency, please call 911 and notify the security agent at the front desk. The nearest defibrillator is mounted on the steps leading from the reception desk down to Grand Avenue. Thank you.
Because they're working on the patio.
Great, thank you. We will move on to our first agenda item, Waste Prevention Environmental Services Regional System Fee Funded Programs and Services. We have Marta McGuire and staff coming up. Council, as you'll recall, last year we directed WPES to provide ongoing technical education about fees and regional waste priorities to inform future council decisions on the annual budget. To continue this effort, staff seeks to support deeper understanding of the program services and key investment areas funded by the regional system fee. Today's presentation will reinforce the connections between the regional system fee and waste reduction goals to support council's budget adoption later this spring. Marta.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Council President Peterson. Again, my name is Marta McGuire. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Waste Prevention Environmental Services Department Director. And I have here with me John Meyer, our Community Services and Education Division Director. We're really pleased to be here with you today to share more in-depth information on our regional waste reduction programs funded by the regional system fee. We're excited because we have several of our team members that you'll see over here that are here today to share. Some of them, their first opportunity being in front of Metro Council. We really wanted to create the opportunity for you to hear firsthand from the staff that deliver our programs and services throughout the region. As President Peterson noted, this presentation is intended to provide a deeper understanding of the key investment areas that are funded by the regional system fee. It's informational, so we're not asking for any action from you at this time. Next slide. As a reminder, I always like to start with our department's primary mission, which is to protect people and the environment by keeping valuable material out of the landfill, and we do that by managing garbage and recycling safely. Our key program areas are listed here: garbage and recycling operations, services and community investments, and planning and partnerships. Next slide. As you know, the Regional Waste Plan provides a framework for how Metro will work with partners to achieve the regional outcomes listed here. I want to acknowledge the importance of our partnerships that make our system work. Public, private, and nonprofit all play a vital role in completing our mission and fulfilling our responsibilities. Next slide. Today, we're going to focus on the investments in the regional waste reduction programs to help inform your discussion on next year's budget. To help set that stage, I want to first briefly review our key engagement efforts today on developing next year's budget, walk through the regional system fee breakdown in our budget, and then I'll turn it over to John and the team to take a deeper dive into our programs and investments. Next slide. As you know, as a part of the budget note adopted with this year's budget, we've increased our engagement efforts for next year's budget development with some highlights listed here. This includes our touch points with you to provide the ongoing technical education about fees and regional waste priorities. We have also convened a waste fee policy task force that is making recommendations to Metro Council on solid waste fee policy. This task force is comprised of diverse stakeholders and just wrapped up last week. Thank you again, Councilors Nolan and Lewis and Simpson, for serving on the task force. Councilor Nolan is the chair of that task force, and Councilor Lewis serving as the vice chair. In addition to engaging the Regional Waste Advisory in budget development, we've also been convening 3 separate roundtables with industry representatives, local governments, and nonprofit organizations to provide input into the budget process. Next slide. So this next slide just illustrates the engagements across these groups over the last 8 months. You can see the touch points with council that began this fall up until today's engagement on the regional waste reduction programs. At the same time, we've been meeting with the task force that has been going on since November, and we'll be bringing those recommendations to you later this month. Lastly, you can see the series of roundtables that we have convened in each stage of budget development with those groups that I mentioned. Next slide. So next I want to just briefly walk through our budget as a reminder and highlight the regional system fee investment allocations. Next slide. So this slide shows an overview of our budget area according to the key program areas. Services and community investment and planning and partnership are funded completely by the regional system fee. Our focus today is on our services and community investment programs that account for the largest portion of the regional waste reduction programs and allocations within the regional system fee. As you know, the regional system fee, which we often refer to as the RSF because we just love acronyms, is paid on every ton of garbage by ratepayers to fund our regional waste reduction programs. Really trying to get away from that though. So you'll hear me say the full words of the terms that we use. Next slide. This slide should look familiar. We share this with you as a part of fee development, which just shows the breakdown of the different solid waste fee components and who pays which fees. Again, today we're focusing on the regional system fee. Next slide. So I want to walk through briefly the more detailed breakdown of each service area, starting with services and community investment. This slide has a lot on it, so let me take a moment just to break it down. First, in dollars, this shows the breakdown of the costs associated with each program and service area that's shown in bold. And next, it shows the allocation relative to the regional system fee. So we developed this slide in response to requests from industry representatives, and it's new, and we're working to make it more accessible, but wanted to share it with you today. It's really just intended to give you the relative portion of accounting for what we spend according to the regional system fee for each program area. You can see that, not surprisingly, household hazardous waste makes up one of the largest portion of our regional system fee programs, and that's because of the costs associated with handling that type of waste, both the skilled professionals that manage it as well as the cost of disposing of it safely and properly. Next slide. The next service area includes planning and partnerships. So this includes the work we do with cities and counties. It includes the direct funding to support waste reduction that goes to local governments annually. It also includes compliance work that's focused on implementing our standards and issuing authorizations at solid waste facilities. And lastly, policy and planning work is the work that we do to set service standards, such as the Bulky Waste Policy Project, and reducing the impacts through policy and legislation. Next slide. The last area consists of our regional garbage and recycling operations. So that's the operation of the 2 transfer stations and the management of St. John's landfill. As you know, the transfer stations are funded by the solid waste fee, but you will see some allocations of the regional system fee and asset and environmental compliance that accounts for the support that these programs are given to support our regional system fee program assets, such as the Redeployment Center and Metro Paint, that also require maintenance and capital asset management. Next slide. So with that sort of context, I'm pleased to turn it over to John to share more details on the programs and services and what we get for those investments.
Can you?
Yeah, and happy to answer any question.
Our regulatory function, where is that paid out of?
So if you go back to the last slide. Oh, one more, sorry, 2 slides back. So compliance, so that exists within that compliance function.
Okay, so our regulatory function comes out of the compliance. Okay, Councilor Lewis and then Councilor Rosenthal.
And is funded by the regional system fee.
First, can you go forward to the next slide? I'm very confused how 29 million is 0% of regional system fee.
So this, because that is funded by the solid waste fee. So if you recall, we have two separate fees, the solid waste fee that funds the cost of the 2 transfer stations operations and the regional system fee that funds our regional waste reduction programs.
So really, the part of the slide that's interesting for this presentation are the two smallest pieces of the pie, the 7% and the 2%.
Correct. So it gets into the conversation the ongoing conversation that we've had with industry representatives around separating actually this portion of, not the exact portion listed here, but capital asset, our capital improvement plan that is funded by our reserves, and having separate cost centers for funding regional system fee program assets like Metro Paint and RID, and funding our capital assets within the transfer stations that are funded by the solid waste fee.
Right, so I think this slide makes a lot of sense if you're looking at it from how do we operate two transfer stations. It does not make a lot of sense if we are trying to dig deep into how a regional system fee functions, because you're showing a full circle when really it's, again, the 9% that's most interesting. So I'd love to, in future, really dig into what the safety asset management maintenance programs are and the environmental regimes, and let the operations fall off, because that's not
Okay.
interesting in this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
However, if we're trying to distinguish between what the regional waste system fee should pay for in the future, this is an overlap. So for me, it was useful to see the overlap, but I agree.
I know I've got a counselor, but this is a clarifying point. If you go to the previous slide, you'll see that that whole circle represents 19% of the regional service fee. And if you go to the one before that, I think, yeah, that whole circle represents 56%.
No, I get that.
Okay.
I think it's misleading to have a presentation on how regional systems fee is spent with a circle that includes operations, because we've spent the better part of the past 6 weeks saying general operations is not regional system fee.
Right.
And nobody believes us. So we just put it up on screen in another confusing way.
So, I will share that we did share this with the industry at the latest industry roundtable that we had last week, and they were receptive. Again, this is the first iteration in our work in trying to be more transparent and making it more accessible. So I agree, we can split that more, and the intention, again, of this is to get the relative proportion of what the regional system fee pays for in terms of our programs and services, and to show those distinctions. So that feedback is helpful.
Thank you.
But my takeaway, there's overlap. And that's what, from that graph, is that there's regional waste system fee going into our transfer stations.
Not into our transfer stations. There is regional system fee going into our environmental compliance and our capital asset management.
Which is part of the transfer station operation maintenance. If they were not there, we would not.
So we provide, and this is where it gets kind of muddy, because we require capital asset management and environmental compliance for both our transfer station operations and our other capital assets like RID and Metro Paint. And the RID and Metro Paint are regional system fee-based programs, and the transfer stations are solid waste fee-based programs.
Okay. So
And we can follow up on this,
I think this.
because I feel like I'm muddying the water more with our attempt of showing the graphs. So, and again, we're always looking for ways to improve how we can provide information, and this was one iteration. So I think it's probably more helpful because you all have a much deeper level of knowledge within the system that we could break this down a little bit more to make it clearer. This is certainly at the macro level of our costs and programs and budgeted, so we can definitely bring that back in a more detailed breakdown.
Bottom line, yes or no? Regional waste system fees are used for operations and maintenance of transfer stations in any way, shape, or form?
No,
Okay. I just wanted to get that on the record.
thank you. No,
All right. Then from there, then we can figure out. Counselor Rosenthal.
And my comments were basically the same questions that Counselor Lewis had. I thought that last chart sort of was a bit misleading because it included stuff that wasn't included. So, but I think the questions have been answered, and
yeah.
you were very clear.
I appreciate that.
Okay, all right, thank you.
All right, now on to
Moving
the
on.
fun stuff.
Advance a couple slides. One more. Thanks so much, Marta. Thank you, Council President Peterson. Thank you, Metro Councilors. Like Marta said, my name's John Meyer. My pronouns are he, him. Our teams and I are excited to share with you several of the programs and services funded by the regional system fee today. As we get started, I just want to reiterate something Marta shared, that this work is made possible through collaborative partnerships between Metro, many great community-based organizations, local governments, and institutions, like Northeast Community Health Center, shown in the first slide, in the slide that was just before this one. So, so now we can move to this slide. Thank you. This slide represents a snapshot of the regional system fee funded programs that Marta touched on in that budget pie chart. This includes services ranging from household hazardous waste collection to volunteer programs like Master Recyclers to work on producer responsibility legislation. Together, these programs and systems serve hundreds of thousands of residents across the region each year. So today, we simply won't be able to cover all of them. So our goal is to provide an overview of some major program areas, including education, Metro paint, and household hazardous waste. Programs like RID Patrol, grants, and planning and compliance, they've either recently come before council or they will be coming forward later this year. So these are some topics we're going to share today that maybe you won't be hearing as much about. Having said that, if there's anything you'd like to learn more about, please let us know because we're very happy to follow up with any information you'd like to have. Next slide, please. I'd just like to note that regional system fee funded programs help government partners and Metro meet state regulatory requirements. I've listed two of the primary here on this slide. This includes the Opportunity to Recycle Act and the Regional Waste Reduction Program. We'll highlight some others where relevant as we move through the presentation. Next slide, please. So let's start with education and leadership. This work focuses on providing culturally responsive services to diverse audiences from across the region, from kindergarten students to adult residents to business owners. This includes classroom presentations in schools, volunteer programs, youth internships, the Recycling Information Center, also known as the RIC, and other resources like waste prevention media campaigns and online tools. Today for education, we're going to highlight school programs, the Recycling Information Center, and we'll touch briefly on leadership work. Next slide, please. In addition to meeting state requirements, education programs also help advance key regional priorities and outcomes. Waste prevention and shared prosperity are the primary goal areas for this work. Topics include climate change, food waste, consumer choices, toxics reduction, and more. That's not to say education doesn't also support accessible garbage and recycling systems. While programs like Recycling Information Center do provide a wealth of waste prevention information, they also help residents better access and simply use our garbage, recycling, and reuse services. So I'd now like to invite up two of our team members, Jennifer Powers, Waste Prevention and Outreach Manager, and Dr. Jamie Rapaski, School-Based Education Coordinator, to share more about the RIC and our school programs. So we'll welcome them up. And we can go to the next slide for Jen's portion.
All right, good morning. Good morning, counselors. My name is Jennifer Powers. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm here to talk about the Recycling Information Center, or the RIC, another one of our great acronyms. The RIC is a phone hotline. We operate Monday through Friday, answering approximately 150 phone calls, emails, and voicemails a day from residents and business owners. And in 2023, we answered over 37,000 calls about garbage and recycling information. Next slide. So the RIC is a diverse team of individuals that answers calls in both English and Spanish for businesses and residents across our region seeking information about recycling, reuse, waste prevention, and more. And we do it all for free to our callers. The RIC is also the information hub, the support service for our Metro facilities. We very often refer callers to our Metro facilities, transfer stations, household hazardous waste. And we also we help people navigate those systems. We answer questions about navigating our garbage and recycling systems for, again, residents and business owners. And of course, when we're not on the phone, we do get out into our community. We go in person to provide education about waste prevention at local events and community presentations. Next slide. In addition to our call center, we do offer several online resources to make our services more engaging and accessible to a wide range of audiences. We manage the Find a Recycler tool. It's a website where anyone can go online, put in the materials they have, the location that they're at, and they actually search our online database to find the best recycling, reuse, or disposal option near them. We also run Recycle or Not. It is both a website and an Instagram account. It's a long-time educational campaign that works with followers on what can and cannot go in their curbside recycling bin. It's co-created in both English and Spanish, and a really fun, entertaining, and educational way to learn about this material. And if you have time today, I highly suggest going to our Recycle or Not website, clicking in the top right corner. We have a game, very fun. And if you could go to the next slide, please. So as you can see from the caller comments that we've gotten directly in the RIC on the slides above, we really are a truly beloved and relied upon resource in our community. We're a friendly face and a friendly voice for folks, and we really meet them where they're at, often when they are facing challenges or really need help navigating our systems. So in this way, the RIC truly has an impact not only by providing waste prevention education, but also by creating trust in our communities. And thank you for your time. I'm going to pass it off to Dr. Jamie Rapaski to talk about Metro school programs.
Thank you. Good morning. My name is Dr. Jamie Rapaski. I use she, her pronouns. For over 30 years, Metro has been providing free waste prevention education in schools, and that work continues to today. This week alone, for example, my 3 teammates and I will provide 28 classroom presentations ranging on composting with worms to consumer goods and their climate impacts. Next slide, please. Our reach extends across the region and serves all 17 school districts within Metro's jurisdiction, helping the region meet Element 6 of the Opportunity to Recycle Act, providing waste prevention and reuse education in schools. For calendar year 2023, for example, education programs offered by Metro, Clackamas County, and our outdoor school providers reached just over 28,000 students, or about 14% of kinder through 12th grade students within the Metro region. Next slide, please. Engaging elementary youth is fascinating in that our classroom presentations, we are the ones helping them in their first connection between the everyday items they use and the natural resources that they come from. Or the first one to help them discover the benefits of composting and how it's nature's way of recycling. For many, it's also the start of their relationship with Metro, the first time they will learn about the regional government that's here to serve them and their families. Next slide, please. For older youth, programming focuses on action and advocacy to solve complex issues. One of our most popular programs engages teenagers across the region on the importance of concept of climate resilience. Stuff to Storms is our 2-day classroom presentation that invites middle and high school students to think critically about our system of stuff and the connection between resource consumption and climate disruption, while inspiring them to take individual and collective actions that will make our system more sustainable. Next slide, please. You can see a few quotes of appreciation that students and teachers have shared with us recently during survey responses and thank you cards. From a teacher in Portland Public Schools, I like the thinking that my students were engaged in. They were looking at the world through a new lens. And from a 5th grader, thank you for showing us the live stream of the trash in the process of being collected. That was cool. I think you are very kind, and I want to work at Metro like you now. This work is especially important to me as we help empower our future leaders and their school communities to see the wonder in all areas of science and sustainability. I am motivated to facilitate conversation of connection and positivity, creating space for youth to feel that their ideas and questions are valid and important to help their community and the planet. I will now pass it off to John to introduce some of our youth leadership and civic engagement programs.
Thanks so much, Dr. Opaski and Jen. I really appreciate that. We move to the next slide, please? Awesome. The last area I'd like to highlight is civic engagement and leadership development. This is such an exciting area of our work. It includes programs administered directly by Metro, like the Master Recycler Program and the WPES Internship Program. And it also includes locally led efforts such as the Environmental Promoters Program and Master Gardeners, as well as an array of community outreach efforts for which Metro provides financial resources, staff support, and materials. Through these programs, folks gain a wealth of knowledge and skills in waste prevention, while also identifying actions they can take to address environmental and human health challenges that concern them and their communities. These programs also work to elevate community voice, values, and lived experiences within decision-making spaces at Metro and beyond. And they support development of job skills and career pathways. We'll leave you now with a short audio quote from one of our Waste Prevention and Environmental Sciences interns, Nayeli Interion, who currently works full-time with Parks and Nature and is applying to law school for the fall. So we'll go to the next slide and see if it plays. That's okay, because I actually have the I have the quote here that I can read. So we'll just go back to that slide with Nayeli's photo. Great, and let me go there. We always come with a backup. So Nayeli was an intern from 2018 till 2022. So this is what she shared, and we can share the PowerPoint with her quote in it too later. What I appreciated most from my internship program was the immense support from my team, my intern coordinator, and management. This support helped me get to where I am today. Today, I'm a college graduate working in our Parks and Nature department in the Community Education and Stewardship team. The internship helped me gain skills that helped me be successful in school, work, and life. I will always look back fondly on my time spent in the internship and be grateful for the people who believed in me. Thank you. So I think that's just a really great message to leave this section with. So we can move on to the next slide. So now, let's explore some major community services funded by the regional system fee, starting with some numbers. 60,000 customers served by Metro Household Hazardous Waste Program, 713,000 gallons of paint processed at Metro Paint, 6,400 sites cleaned by the RID program. These astounding numbers, just for 2023, provide a quick snapshot of the scale of positive impact programs like Household Hazardous Waste and Metro Paint and RID have across the region and even across the state. Next slide, please. As we revisit the regional priorities and outcomes slide shared earlier, we find that these programs focus heavily on providing excellent, accessible services for recovery of priority materials, like hazardous waste and paint, or addressing regional cleanup needs. At the same time, transforming old paint into a new product or providing valuable workforce development opportunities through the RID program help make significant progress on waste prevention and shared prosperity goals. Today, we would like to highlight Metro Household Hazardous Waste and Metro Paint programs. So please join me in welcoming up Debbie Humphrey, Metro Central Transfer Station Superintendent, and Cortland Benson, Metro Paint Manager, to share more. So we can move to the next slide, and that'll get Debbie started when she settles.
Good morning, Metro Councilors. I'm Deb Humphrey, and I use she, her pronouns. I'm here to share some information about Metro's Household Hazardous Waste Program. This program has been a big part of my life. I joined it as a variable hour technician back in 1996, and now as the station superintendent, I'm here to tell you a little bit about why we have a program, what it's like to be a HazCat, and some benefits of the program. Next slide, please. Thank you. Why does Metro have a household hazardous waste program? It's because state law requires us to. Specifically, we were required to establish permanent depots to receive household hazardous waste. And in 1994, the first year that both Metro South and Metro Central were open, we served 18,000 customers. That was a lot back then. And if you recall what John just mentioned, this past year, we served 60,000 at both stations in collection events. So we've come a long ways, and that 60,000 customers brought us 4.2 million pounds of hazardous waste. So we're seeing a lot. Next slide, please. Being a hazardous waste technician, it was the best job I ever had, quite honestly. For me, it was the right mix of hard physical labor and keen mental challenges. Each day, the hazardous waste receiving team will unload 6,000 pounds of material. That's a lot of hard physical work. And with the many rules and requirements around hazardous waste, as well as the chemistry and the materials that we manage, that's a lot of keen mental challenges. We're regulated by DEQ, OHA, EPA, OSHA, and the Fire Marshal. And the materials that we manage could be flammable, toxic, acidic, caustic, reactive, explosive, or maybe none of those. So at this point, I wanted to point out that the hazardous waste teams are also on call 24/7 to provide emergency response to any hazardous waste spills or releases in our transfer stations. Having this expertise in-house gets the stations back up, running, and serving the public quickly anytime we have an incident. Next slide, please. This slide highlights the community benefit that we provide. That's our reuse program. Low-risk products in perfectly good conditions such as cleaners, fertilizers, paints, and automotive products. Dignity Village, Habitat for Humanity, and Clackamas County Gleaners are just some of our reuse partners. Okay, I've saved my favorite part for last. Next slide, please. Collection events.
Of New Paint. We are currently in the process of developing a new business plan for the program. This will help us improve our cost recovery strategies and financial practices while supporting the many public benefits we provide. Metro Paint is funded by, that's a double up there. Next slide, please. Along with the environmental and economic outcomes, ensuring a safe and equitable, thriving workforce is foundational to Metro Paint. We ensure a trauma-informed work environment that centers staff around mental and physical wellness. The work is labor-intensive, involving the use of an array of chemicals and manufacturing equipment. Safety is number one, and we are working consistently to improve process and procedures. We've honored and celebrate the wealth of diverse lived experience and cultures that our team members bring to Metro. In addition to our team members, they have years of experience in the trades and other sectors, but for many of them, this is their first time working for a public government agency. To ensure the success, it is critical that we acknowledge and meet people where they are at while supporting growth and accountability. This slide is folks graduating their probationary period after coming off of a labor contract that had been used for 20 years at Metro Paint that we no longer use. And the photo on the right is us hosting. Metro Paint also has a powerful story to tell and creates wonderful ways to engage community members across the region in recycling and reuse education. Next slide. As I close, I just wanted to share how special this program has been to me. It was the foundation that helped redirect the course of my life in a positive direction. It has helped me build and foster a skill set that I could apply throughout Metro to help advance my career pathway, individuals on my team, and program elements within the agency. It has allowed me to raise, support, and provide for my 2 daughters and my wife, breaking the cycle of poverty and trauma experience as a youth for my family. It has provided a home, transportation, adequate food, and opportunities to experience the world in ways I could never imagine. And it was, you can see, that's my beautiful family there, a little summary of my work history here at Metro. And it was always a part of my dream returning back to Metro Paint to create those opportunities for others. So we had a more robust workforce and agency within. Thank you guys for your time. It was great being here. I'll pass it back to Marta McGuire, our WPES director.
Thank you so much. All right, if we go to the next slide. So I want to thank you for your time today, for the presentations, and to our team. We have a couple of discussion questions up here. Do you have any questions on the information presented today? Are there any service areas that council would like more information on? So with that, I will turn it back to President Peterson.
Thank you, everyone, especially for the stories. It's much appreciated. Council discussion? Are we online? Okay, Councilor Rosenthal and Lewis.
Thank you. A very interesting presentation. I know there's lots of good work. I'm always fascinated by the Metro Paint. A couple just sort of technical questions. First of all, Are you able to, or are there restrictions, safety restrictions on giving students in schools field trips to either the hazardous waste, the paint, or just the transfer stations? Is that something that we do, or is it something that we are prevented from doing? And then I had a question about the call center. I saw a lot of calls from other parts of the state, and I'm just curious. And then a last question was, have you seen any change in the overall composition of hazardous waste over the last 10 or 15 years? In other words, has that waste stream changed in some dramatic way, some substantive way? I mean, we're no longer getting pentachlorophenol, I don't think, but there's a whole bunch of other things we probably are getting.
Thanks, Councilor Rosenthal. I can start with that one. So we'll go back to the tours, was
Yeah.
one of the first questions. Yes, we do offer tours to schools. We do focus on more older kids, well, third grade and up, I believe it is. So kindergartner folks, they're a little tough around the transfer station.
Yeah,
But yes, around the transfer station and at hazardous waste. I'll let Cortland speak to Metro Paint later, but we do at the transfer station with hazardous waste, and they are required to have chaperones there too with them.
Yeah, of course.
So yes on that. The waste stream, oh my gosh, yes, it has changed over the year. When I first started at the hazardous waste facility, DDT came in almost daily. We would see DDT. Now it's every other week. So we've gotten that out. Watching the difference in, speaking to paint, the amount of oil-based paint versus latex paint. Over the past 20 years, we've seen that change from where we used to see a lot of oil-based paint, not so much latex paint, to the point where those have reversed. It's just been really interesting watching some of the trends. And yes, there are different waste streams that come from different parts of the region too. And a lot of it has to do with newer development, older development, closer to rural or agricultural areas, more city center. So it is fascinating. And I welcome you to come out and take a tour of the facility. We can dive deeper into some of that stuff if you're interested.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Those are really great questions, Councilor Rosenthal. And I just add just a bit to the field trip item. We've developed a curriculum and really strict safety protocols for those, and we're able to offer a limited number, especially to older students. We do hope as we move forward with the system facility plan, any new facilities may have things like classrooms or other types of spaces to make those more safer, more effective as educational spaces. And then with the Recycling Information Center, I'll look to Jen. I'll share what I think I know, and then Jen can correct me if I'm wrong. Or maybe Jen, want to come on up and share? So the question was, what do we receive from outside of the state? So,
Downstate,
or outside of the region, sorry. We probably do receive some things from outside of the state too.
We do. It's amazing how far our phone number travels. We've gotten calls from across the country from people needing help with garbage and recycling. We try our best, although as we know, very regionally based rules and regulations around those things. For statewide calls, we do have a contract with Oregon DEQ to answer statewide e-cycles, so electronic recycling questions. So we are a state resource for e-cycles. We get calls from across the state. But again, I mean, this number travels outside of our region. We certainly get calls from Vancouver. I know we get calls from Southern Oregon.
Yeah.
And we do our best. Again, there are statewide programs that we can easily answer, and the staff is just so incredible. They are walking encyclopedias of knowledge and know a lot about our state as well.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, it was a jingle, so a lot of us know it as a jingle.
Oh, yeah, no,
Yeah.
people call us all the time wanting to know where the radio jingle is. Yeah, that's a common call too.
Why did it go away? I do not understand.
I'll send you a file. Yeah.
No. Councilor Lewis?
Sure, thank you so much. This presentation was really nice to set the foundation for the public services that we provide, that the whole region benefits from. In terms of your bullet point question, what would I hope to learn more about? Food waste. Obviously, there's the component of it that is capital and processing, but there's also the campaign side. So that's super interesting to me. I'm surprised nobody said the word batteries yet today, because I think that's its own scope of work that particularly has arisen, probably, Deb, since you were first hired. Lithium batteries are everywhere. I just found a lithium battery in a toddler toy. They're everywhere. And then also, obviously, to my earlier set of questions, diving deeper into the environmental compliance work. So just kind of reflecting on the presentation, in terms of Metro Paint, I know 2 budget cycles ago, we made some significant investments to make sure that not only were we being fair to our employees and their classification, but also your leadership position was created. In terms of 29 FTE, where do you see the program going from here? Or is it too early if you're still developing your business model for paint?
I think it's still a little bit early. You know, we're also working on modernization. You know, that's another element of the strategic plans. We're just trying to reestablish kind of structure, you know, and kind of baseline, and then kind of going from there. You know, the larger conversation is also facility system plans. You know, we don't own that building and we're only there for so long. And so I think we have a little bit more time to kind of figure out exactly kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, but we did just make some investments in this space, so we'll be there for a minute, we think, yeah.
We'll be there for another 4 or 5 years, maybe.
Yeah, a minute in government time, yeah.
At least, yeah.
I think that the consultant work will really help us kind of pinpoint what direction we're going.
Okay.
And kind of where we need to be.
Do we have a consultant engaged right now?
Yeah, we're in a scoring evaluation process right now. We've already increased our gallon can prices in our retail, working on our contract with Paint Care, you know.
Sorry, excuse me, could you speak closer to the mic?
Oh, sorry. Working on our Paint Care contract and negotiations there for increased dollars that go back into our budget. And we've already raised our gallon can prices last year, so we're already seeing that return. And then we've developed export program, so we're now sending paint internationally, which is more revenue back in. So again, some of this consultant work will kind of maybe pinpoint where we need to be or where we need to focus energy.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait to see how the program develops, both for its effect here locally, its workforce components, but also, as you mentioned, it has an international reputation.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Great, thank you. Counselor Wong.
Oh, great. Thank you, Madam President. I just want to thank you for the whole team coming out to present on your work. It's great to see and also great to hear your stories. So that's all very exciting and heartwarming. I think my question is really around, like, how are we, you know, given this body of work, really adapting to kind of the future landscape? And that's probably like the $1 million question that we're working on, you know, over time. But I see kind of like in the executive summary for regional waste plan, greenhouse gas emissions as a key indicator is listed. And, you know, I know we're rethinking innovation and investment grants, and then, you know, just everything with the Recycling Modernization Act. I'm wondering how you are approaching that planning for this kind of new landscape that we're in with all these different kind of buckets of work that are interlinked at Metro, but, you know, really wanting to make progress on all of them. And then for me, I think I really want to learn more about the multifamily collection services, because I think that's critical, especially for, you know, folks in my district, because a lot of our folks live in, you know, apartment complexes. So really want to dive in on that. But yeah, just kind of like, what is the big picture for all the programs going forward?
Thank you. I really appreciate that question. I would say the regional waste plan gives us the vision and the outcomes at a high level of what we're advancing towards. But within that, we know that the material and product landscape is ever changing, and we have to constantly seek continuous improvement and being prepared to evolve. So hopefully you heard throughout these presentations a couple of different things. One, the business plan that Metro Paint is looking at, we're stopping and assessing and looking at how we need to adapt to move forward to get to those outcomes. You also heard Deb talk about the strategic plan for the collection efforts and council's direction to look at I&I. So I think part of getting to that future is also remembering to assess and take a moment to look at where we need to evolve. So that is something that's happening within each of our key programs. So those are continued conversations that we look to have with council as we continue to chart the path forward. In terms of the multifamily, the bulky waste policy project, which we presented to you on, I think, January, November. It's for, in the last several months, we're actually coming back to you in the spring. We just completed the pilot project for that are going to inform what those service standards look like. So we'll be coming back to you shortly to share that information and next steps. So you'll continue to be engaged in that conversation.
And, I heard that you had some like state contracts and things like that, but are there other opportunities to deepen our impact by leveraging like future federal funding?
Absolutely.
Yeah, just so,
Do you want to
yeah,
talk about
like how we can
Yeah.
make
Great
the
question.
regional service fee go further with, other funders as well.
Yes, thank you so much, Councilor Wong. You could probably see us smiling as you asked that question. We actually made a pretty significant investment in looking for grants and other funding sources. We shifted a position to a grant writer and an administrator who's now exploring kind of a multitude of federal grant options, like through the EPA. Like as an example, looking at how can we do increase civic engagement programming through the lens of climate change and climate resiliency. Can we provide, where can we find investments to support the food depackager, to address food waste issues? So they're putting together kind of a strategic plan for how we approach grants, and then they'll kind of go through that process annually where we'll look at like what are those priorities for council, for Metro to move forward with these other funding sources, which is awesome. I think the more we can diversify, the better.
Great, glad you're thinking of it.
Yeah.
We always love the federal match. Thank you.
So before we go back around, because I think Councilor Lewis has, oh, you did, but you didn't, took it off, okay. Just to round this out, I guess, I just want to hone in on the kind of the reason for just covering this information is what was included in the regional waste fee. And I think what it shows is that it's the public good portion of what we do, beyond the transfer station, which is an important function. It feels to me like again, I'll just keep repeating this, if our goal is to actually reduce waste going to the landfill, and that is our bigger overall public good, then as we move forward, we should be reducing our risk on the transfer side, and moving it towards the public good portion. And I think that's where I'm most interested, is in how we slowly morph ourselves into a system that is much more focused on that public good portion, and less focused on the things that maybe the private sector could pick up. And so that's where my head goes, is what more can we do on this side that we're not doing? And what more within these programs could be funded in order to reduce the waste going to the landfill on that public goods side? So I think that's where my interest lies as we move forward with the rate transparency and everything else. And I just wanted to highlight, because I'm looking at Marisa, that we've talked about sometime later after budget has been adopted, just a conversation in general on public-private partnerships and how we are engaged in public-private partnerships today. What does it look like at Metro? And have a conversation as a council, as a agency, of what are the values that we put into anything that we would look at going forward in terms of public-private partnerships, because we have several decisions across the agency that we're going to be discussing, and I'd rather have that conversation about what values that we want to see before we start negotiations. And each one of those will probably have very specific details related to them, because they're very different from the Expo decision to others. But I kind of want to have that overall public-private, like, what does it mean? Because public-private relations and contract negotiations have changed dramatically over the last 20 to 30 years, and they're no longer they're no longer as bad as they were because we are now understanding how to put the public good portion back into those contracts. And I think we need to update ourselves and think about what we're trying to do so that we can have a clear role in the region, no matter what the topic is. So that, I just wanted to be clear. I think this part of what we're doing is amazing, and it is part and parcel to getting, I said it, Counselor Lewis counts how many times I say that during a meeting. Just realized I did it again. I think it's part of that package, right, of like what we do and what we do well. So, did you want to say anything on that?
Thank you, Council President. I think it is definitely worth Metro reflecting on the values that we want applied when we're engaging in public-private partnerships. I think, so much of what we do, it's hard to think of an area that doesn't have some element of public and private collaboration. And I think, especially in the solid waste field, I was sharing with Marta, my husband and I went around to a couple salvage places a couple weekends ago, and the margins that they're existing on are so small. Like, I honestly don't know how some of these reuse organizations do it, and yet they are providing like an incredible service to our community. And I just think that there's so many areas here to express Metro's values of wanting to prevent waste, and also do it in community with the people who are already doing the heavy lifting in the field now. So would really welcome a conversation about our values as an organization and when we enter into those partnerships and how.
And on a lighter note, the DDT, where are you? I would encourage everybody to follow the two nesting eagles, Big Bear Valley. Jackie had 3 eggs this year that she's sitting on, and they're about to come out. So there's 33,000 people watching her right now on her nest, but to the point of being part of having a better, brighter future and more environmentally solid. I just wanted to call out Jackie and Shadow, because I don't know about you guys, but I am just seeing eagles everywhere. Growing up, never saw them, except, fishing holes in Wisconsin. But I think it's incredible, the amount of, the resiliency within nature once you come back from interesting use of pesticides that we've been able to come back, just on the lighter note. Anyway, Councilor Lewis,
Sure.
and then Councilor Rosenthal.
Thank you. You sparked a kind of provocation of maybe not a direct response to today's presentation, but a conversation that's worthy of us having at council in the future, which is that we've had 2 international level investments here in the Portland region that have been framed as pilots or experiments or tests. One, Agilix in their closure last week, the other in Loop in their period of investing in reuse of consumer product packaging during the pandemic, 22 to 23. If those models don't work in Portland, they're not gonna work anywhere. So what have we done to help be hospitable, to help pave the way for those models to be successful, and what's our responsibility? You say public-private partnership, and it could be a partnership, but it could also just be shifting the landscape in which private operates in order for them to have business models that last beyond 5 years or a pilot project. So I'd like for us to explore what our responsibility is for investments like that.
That's a good point. Thank you. Councilor Rosenthal?
Yep. Thank you, Madam Chair. My question is actually somewhat related to what Councilor Lewis just mentioned. Some of the big challenges we have going forward, there's regulatory changes, as you know, with the Producers Recycling Act, and as well as technological changes and technological options. Keeping up with all of that is complex, and if you're going to try and pursue public-private partnerships or just leadership roles, we have to have dedicated staff to do that. I mean, it's not, so I guess my question is, how do we accomplish that? And do we have enough staff? Do we need somebody to to track these things. I mean, we could do it by paint, by hazardous waste, and by general process, plastics, for example, another big issue. So I guess the question is raised as to, do we have enough staff and do we have them, do we need anything more to be able to deal with these complexities?
Thank you for that question. We do have dedicated staff that are focused on producer responsibility and implementation of the Recycling Modernization Act. But as that unfolds, we've also learned that managing that new landscape may require additional resources. If you remember Andrew Doy from Vancouver, BC, that spoke at the International Symposium panel, he discussed the team of staff that they have within Vancouver just managing the producer responsibility organization work. So I do think that's a question that will be asked in the future as we look at how the implementation of the act unfolds.
Okay.
Thank you for that question.
Okay, well, to keep us on time, thank you. I appreciate the presentation and the conversation.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.
And the reduction in slides from 70 plus. Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, 2024 Supportive Housing Services County Fiscal Year 24 Quarter 2 reports. That's a mouthful. We've got folks coming up. I'm sorry, I don't know what's going on. Okay. We are in our third year of implementation of the Supportive Housing Services Program, which has continued to build capacity to regionalize our housing services. Counties are making substantial progress toward their annual plan goals, and SHS funding has already been positively impacted thousands of people. Today, staff will present the second quarterly reports from Washington, Clackamas, Multnomah counties and share plans for focusing on system improvements and evaluation in year 3 to ensure that funds maximize efficiency and community impacts. I'm going to ask you both to introduce yourselves. Thanks.
Hello, can you hear me? Hi, I'm Yesenia Delgado, and I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the SHS manager.
Is your mic on? I'm sorry. I think you might have just turned it off. Thanks, Connor.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. Thanks.
Hi again, I'm Yesenia Delgado. I use she and her pronouns, and I'm the SHS manager at Metro.
And good morning, my name is Rachel Lembo. I also use she, her pronouns, and I am the finance manager for the housing department here at Metro.
Thank you so much for having us join today and present a programmatic overview of quarter 1, quarter 2 SHS update and all the meaningful work that is happening at Washington, Clackamas, and Multnomah County. Rachel and I will be here presenting today, and then we do have our director, Patricia Rojas, and our deputy director, Liam Frost, who will be supporting and answering questions today. So again, we're really elated to be here to give you all an update on the work that has been happening. This work session today is informational only, so we are not expecting you all to make any decisions. Additionally, we just also wanted to note that we agree with the SHS audit findings that the auditor provided you all a couple months ago on the need for us to be coming to you all more frequently to provide more SHS updates. So this is just the first of many, and we will be coming back to you all to provide additional updates on things like the Tri-County Planning Body and other regional alignment capacity building work that we are doing. So for today, again, we are focused on providing an update on the SHS work that's been happening this fiscal year. As you all know, the SHS Oversight Committee meets once a month, so we will be providing this similar quarter 2 update to the Oversight Committee. And then for today, we really want to focus and hone in on the progress that each of the counties are making towards reaching their annual work plan goals. But today we'll only be sharing a truncated version of what's in the reports. And I know that I sent you all the reports last week, so I'd really encourage you all to spend some time with those reports because the counties do share in their additional highlights, successes, and challenges that they're experiencing. So they're just full of great information that I think we can all be leaning into and just observing how the work is happening there. As you all can see, the counties aren't available today here to answer questions, but They are committed to providing if there are any programmatic specific questions that come up, I'll connect with them and get you all those answers in writing. So with that, I think we can go to the next slide. Yeah, so on today's agenda, we'll be providing you all some program highlights that have, again, just where each county is at in terms of meeting each of their outcome goals that they've set this year. We'll also be sharing additional goals and highlights related to the work plan goals, and then share some additional program stories and updates of some of the work that's happened in this quarter. I'll then pass it off to my colleague Rachel, who will do a financial update, and then we'll close out the presentation with providing you all an update on the work that we're doing here at Metro to advance oversight, compliance, and accountability. So we are building out a team and doing some additional work that we're excited to provide you an update on. And then we'll have time for questions and answers at the end. Next slide, please. Yeah, so on this slide here, you see the regional progress to annual work plan goals with the different service interventions and the fiscal year 24 goal along with the progress that we've made thus far. In this slide here, you see all of the data from each of the counties rolled up into one regional outcome for each of the slides. And I will just walk through them really briefly just so you see already the incredible success that's happening. So for permanent supportive housing placements, we had a goal of placing 1,395 households, and with 671 households already placed, we are about 48% halfway through the year in meeting this goal. Permanent supportive housing, as you know, this is rent subsidy that comes with like longer term rent retention services for households that are experiencing higher levels of acuity. Whereas rapid rehousing, again, provides placement support services with short to medium retention services and wraparound services. So our fiscal year 24 goal was 935 households. And as of December 31st, we have 417 households that have been placed in housing. And we're about 45% on our way to meeting this goal. Eviction prevention services, this is a service and intervention type that supports households that are currently housed avoid the trauma that comes from, losing your home and being displaced. So in fiscal year 24, our goal was to prevent 1,725 households from experiencing homelessness, and we are at 1,496 households. So 87% already. So we have met this goal and are on track to exceed. We haven't met it, but we are on track to meet it and exceed it. I got a little ahead of myself because the next goal we have met already, which are our shelter units. And we had committed that with SHS dollars, we would fund 460 beds, and we have already funded 510. So we are doing great work on that side of things. And again, these are outcomes in addition to a lot of the already incredible work happening out in the community with other funding sources. So these are specific to SHS. And I just wanted to share that since SHS program started in July 2021, through this recent quarter end of December 31st, 2023, we have in totality housed 6,700 people in permanent supportive housing and rapid rehousing programs, prevented 20,000 people from eviction or falling into homelessness, and expanded and or sustained shelter capacity by about 1,300 beds. So again, SHS, I believe, is truly changing the trajectory of so many people's lives. And I'm just really excited to be here sharing a little bit more about it and where we're at halfway through year 3. Next slide, please. So we're going to kick things off by providing county-specific updates. So we'll start with Clackamas County, who's doing incredible work. You see, this is a slide broken up from the previous slide, but just for Clackamas County. So you see the different intervention types, their goals, and I'll just walk really quickly through their progress. So for permanent supportive housing placements, Clackamas County has placed 223 households. So they are at 55% of their goal has been met. For rapid rehousing placements, this was actually the first time that Clackamas County, with SHS funding, launched a rapid rehousing program in their county, and they had a goal of 120 households, and they've already met this goal as of quarter 2. So again, huge kudos to Clackamas County, who not only launched their first ever rapid rehousing program, but already as of Q2 has met their goal that they had set for themselves. Eviction prevention, with 591 households being served, they are at 95% of the way halfway through the year and reaching that. And for shelter units, as you see here, they are at 97%, almost meeting that with 150 beds. So Clackamas County, it's really incredible work that's happening out there with service providers and the county. Already have either met some of their goals and are well on track to be meeting the rest of their goals. Next slide, please. So just to share some additional highlights of the work happening in Clackamas County, they have enhanced their coordinated access hotline enhancement in a partnership with 211. And this is basically coordinated access refers to the stepping stone for which a lot of households or people like maybe call in to seek more services, do an assessment so they get connected into services. So over the last year with SHS funded, they have been able to increase the staff supporting this hotline. They had a backlog of 1,800 calls, and they've been able to clear all of that in this fiscal year due to the additional capacity that SHS has provided. And not only that, but they also are able to answer live calls daily, something that they weren't able to do before. And they're open from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m., including weekends and holidays, with the call wait time just being down to 2 minutes. So again, coordinated access is really the backbone of a lot of the homeless infrastructures, and Clackamas County is doing pretty awesome work in ensuring that they have a robust coordinated access system so people are able to access the services that they need. Clackamas County also completed a procurement for the creation of new service-enriched resource centers. So these centers are safe, welcoming, and supportive spaces where people can get connected with permanent supportive housing opportunities. And they also access other services like enrolling into public benefits. So that's also work that happened this quarter in Clackamas County. And additionally, in conjunction with their work plan goals of providing technical assistance to service providers, Clackamas County contracted with providers like Insight for Action, Advanced Technology Communications, and Social Finance to provide technical assistance to their service providers around things like project and process management, coaching, technology, file management, and other key organizational development areas like human resource, fiscal business services, and strategic planning. So you really see here Clackamas County, again, doing really incredible work, but also focusing on system infrastructure and adding support to their service providers. If we go to the next slide. So this quarter, Clackamas County also executed a 2-year, $400,000 intra-agency agreement for a pilot community paramedic program. This partnership is between the Housing and Community Development and Public Health Divisions and equips a licensed healthcare provider to engage directly with individuals experiencing homelessness at camps, shelters, and other areas known for congregation. As you see here, the services that this program is providing is basic medical evaluation, treatment, vaccination opportunities, addiction education, and referrals to coordinated entry and community resources. So really focusing on not just providing placement programs at Clackamas County, but also doing the really intentional work needed to outreach to these communities to make sure that they get connected to the programs that they have there. So that's a little bit about Clackamas County, but like I said, this is really a truncated version, so there's a lot more in those quarterly reports that I sent you all if you would like to learn some more. Next, we'll pivot over to Multnomah County. And you'll see a similar format here where I'm providing you all their progress to year 3 goals. With permanent supportive housing, they have supported 222 households this year, so they're about 45% of their way to reaching their goal. In rapid rehousing, they're about 34%, with 174 households being served. In eviction prevention, they are at 18% of meeting their goal through Q2, with 115 households being served. And for shelter units, they have already met that goal, providing 330 SHS-funded beds. So we are in real time having conversations with Multnomah County to understand, why it is that their goals are where they're at, to like be able to like understand and see if there's anything that we can support to ensure that their goals are met through this fiscal year. Now, if we go to the next slide. Some of the additional work happening at Multnomah County includes that in Q2, Multnomah County launched a specialized regional long-term rent assistance program included for people experiencing chronic homelessness who are actively on probation or parole. And this was in coordination with the Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities and also their Veteran Services Division in Multnomah County. And they continue to have a partnership with the Assertive Community Treatment Team, providing them regional long-term rent assistance vouchers for people with dual diagnoses, so people with both a substance use disorder and a mental health challenge. So this is a really great example of the cross-system coordination that SHS provides funding to do at the counties. Additionally, SHS provided Multnomah County internally additional staff, and with that additional staff, some of the work that they have been doing is to see how they can provide additional capacity to their providers. So in Q2, Multnomah County, the Joint Office, hosted their first ever provider conference in late October 23. This was a one-day conference that created partnership and community providers attended. There was 10 different conference sessions designed to be collaborative, elicit authentic feedback, and offer an opportunity to problem solve around various topics. So we heard really great feedback about the opportunity to have providers come in, lean into discussions around how to make the work better. And then finally, the Joint Office in Multnomah County also in August of 2023 launched their outreach data collection pilot. So this is in partnership with Central City Concerns and Transition Projects. The pilot aims to enhance data quality at Multnomah County so that it becomes more effective in reaching and connecting people to services. So it actually incorporates this new approaches in key areas such as data collection, coordinated access assessment, and outreach coordination. So data is a huge part of the work that we do to ensure that we're being effective and evaluating. So it's really great to hear more about this pilot, and we're really excited here at Metro to like keep hearing about it and understanding how it's going and seeing if this is something that we could apply at a more regional level. Now, if we go to the next slide. This slide provides an overview of some of the permanent supportive housing buildings that have opened in Multnomah County in Q2. So SHS funding is being leveraged there to provide rent assistance and the support services. So they leverage other funding sources to provide the capital for the buildings. One of the buildings is the Fairfield, which provides 75 units of permanent supportive housing. And it is in downtown Portland, targeted to serve people experiencing homelessness who request Black, Indigenous, or people of color culturally specific services. So Urban League will be providing on-site services focused on peer support, mental health, and housing retention and life skills, which again, that is the part that SHS is funding right there, the additional support services. The Hazel Yingling Apartments will create 206 affordable rental units in the Creston neighborhood in Portland with 30 PSH units in partnership with Home Forward. So Multnomah County is providing $300,000 to this project to, again, support the support services that are happening at this building. And then Powellhurst Place is in the Powellhurst neighborhood, as you can imagine by the name. And they are in Southeast Portland, providing 46 units, being 2-bedroom apartments for families, and 12 units will be permanent supportive housing, set aside for households that identify as Population A, who request Native American culturally specific services. And Multnomah County is providing $120,000 in funding to support the supportive services happening at this building.
Can I just interrupt? Because we're in the middle of another conversation about how to use SHS funding, can you just clearly state that I heard you, but it went by really fast. There are other resources for the capital construction of those units.
Yeah, that is right.
The supportive housing service money is being used, how?
For services. So this is solely services or rent assistance.
Make it very clear to anybody watching, these were not built with the SHS.
Yeah, that is correct. So each of these buildings leverage other funding sources, including other bonds potentially, to fund the capital and construction of the building. And so SHS, Supportive Housing Services funding, is only providing services or rent assistance at each of these locations. Thank you for the additional clarification there.
I just don't want anybody to walk away thinking that we're already doing what we're asking permission to do, if we were to
Absolutely.
go that way.
That makes a lot of sense. And yeah, it's part of what makes the supportive housing services really unique, because they can get paired up with these buildings that are in desperate need of the support services, and SHS is able to provide those. Next slide, please. Yeah, so next we'll pivot over to Washington County. So again, this slide probably looks super familiar at this point, but this is a table representing where Washington County is in terms of their progress to their year 3 goals. So they had a goal of supporting 500 households in permanent supportive housing, and they have supported thus far 226 households. So they are 45% of their way in meeting this goal. They are 38% on their way of meeting their rapid rehousing placement goal, because they've supported 115 households thus far. For eviction prevention, they have actually already surpassed this goal. As you can see here, they get that bright yellow star indicating that they have met their goal and have served 790 households in this intervention. With shelter units, they are at 50% of their goal, supporting 30 shelter units with SHS. And if we go to the next slide, this is additional work happening in Washington County. So the Locally Coordinated Command Center, or LC3, as you might know, initiative expanded in Q2 to encompass 4 geographically focused convenings to connect unsheltered individuals to services. Through enhanced coordination, case conferencing, and progressive engagement, 234 unsheltered individuals have been housed and 62 individuals are actively engaged in housing programs since the launch of this initiative. Another highlight that's going on in Washington County is that the Homeless Service Division saw significant improvement with some of the systems improvement work that they were doing around invoicing and processing, and making more timely payments to the service providers, reducing the average time in which providers get a payment of 49 to 19 days. So that's really great work happening at Washington County, and I know service providers are really appreciating getting those payments a lot quicker. Washington County also provided capacity building funding to 9 different organizations, totaling $1.3 million to support a variety of capacity building needs across different partner organizations in Washington County. Next slide. Yeah, and for Washington County, you might have already have heard about this, but just wanted to note so everyone here knew that Washington County opened some Safe Rest pod villages in Q2. One was in partnership with Open Door Housing Works, who functions as the operator of one of the Safe Rest pod villages. So this new site hosts 30 pod structures and is poised to provide shelter for up to 40 individuals. And this site is scheduled to remain open for the next 2 years. And also Washington County opened another Safe Rest pod village in Hillsborough that added 30 new pallet homes to the shelter system, with 10 homes intended to be used by couples and support 40 individuals at this time. So in total, Washington County was able to open 60 additional pod structures, and that will serve up to 80 individuals through this year. So really great work happening in all 3 of the counties. Like I said, there's much more in those Q2 reports that I send your way. And I will pass it over to my colleague Rachel to provide a financial snapshot of where we're at.
Before we do that, we really appreciate the updates, and I'm glad we're getting them more often, so thank you. When we get the information on number of, if we could go back, like beds and that sort of thing, but we don't get the information about the actual wraparound services. And I'm pretty sure we collect it. And it's in the report?
For households receiving those wraparound services?
Well, I'm looking for like the performance metrics that, like, what kind of data are we collecting around, I don't know if it's service hours or FTE or number of people served and outcomes.
Yeah, so we are collecting like the types of wraparound services that providers are providing. We aren't tracking at this point in time service hours, but we are tracking retention rates of when a household stops getting these services, so at the 6 and 12-month mark. So we are collecting those, and those are indicating, you know, how successful people are able to retain their housing after services have ended. So given that, you know, we were just starting year 3, like retention rates were kind of like building up in terms of the households receiving the services. So we could definitely do a much more intentional job at providing those retention rates when we're sending that information.
Yeah, and I guess, you know, a lot of the questions externally and with even the council have been over time of how are the counties building up their programs? What's the rate? What does it look like in terms of the growth of those services over time? And I guess that would be interesting to track to see when they're fully programmed out, right? And what's the rate of services being provided? And then the outcomes, both those things. So you'd have to get up and go to the microphone. Okay, you're good. Okay.
Yeah, no, thank you for that comment. I think that, yeah, as we are halfway through year 3, we have definitely have seen that a lot of the programs are much more scaled than they were before. So I think drawing those parallels over like where are their programs, like permanent supportive housing, that's something that typically takes more time in terms of building out. But we could definitely make that connection clear in terms of like where programs around rapid rehousing, shelter are in the ramp up and how they are connecting and how many households are being served in that. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Councilor Lewis and then Councilor Simpson.
Sure, thank you so much. Just picking up on the thread of Council President Peterson, and maybe similar question, different way. Obviously, with these funds, we're looking at a universe where we are deeply investing in PSH. It's an important tool. It's not the right tool for everyone, but it is a continuum between we are stabilizing you, eviction prevention, here's your money, you good, bye, and PSH. And we need more documentation of where that continuum is being built out, because we want to make sure that the investments are right-sized and that we're not seeing people put into PSH because that's the only option, and it's mostly reserved for the folks who need that deepest level of help the most. So I think that's the real question, is how do you kind of categorize those investments that are mid-range between that deep investment and that seemingly one-time investment?
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's exactly some of the work that Metro is doing as we continue to build out our team here to provide further oversight and accountability work at each of the counties. Is it is, like you said, a continuum of services with coordinated access really being a really important part that determines, you know, where each household is served on that continuum of services. So we are doing some intentional work with the counties this year and providing them actually additional information and guidance around like things like population A and B, right? Who should be served in each of these interventions? Because so far it's been a lot of like building and infrastructure growth. So now that we have more and more programs cemented, we are doing more of that. Help me understand who you're serving here, and is this really the best intervention for this household that has this level of acuity? So thank you, and just know that we're working on that.
Good. I think that's a good clarification, but I'm just trying to get at the level of services that go into the PSH, because I'm not sure that we're not getting enough transparency to the external stakeholders, including us, of like, what does it take to build up to fully get to that point, and where are we? Because I think that's where people are, where's the money going? Well, it's a big program that underlines the support for all of this. And it's not just number of beds, but it's the full, like, and so to be able to understand that and grasp it somehow, I think is important to start getting that data so we can see the growth and the outcomes, obviously. But
Yeah, and if I could just add really quickly that we do have an internal team here at Metro that is working to develop and understand the PSH model, because you are absolutely right. It's a really needed model, but it can be, you know, even me that I've been doing this work for so long, it is a pretty comprehensive model that is composed of, you know, a lot of times capital, services, rent assistance, case management. So it does encompass a lot of things. So we do have this team that's working really intentionally on building out a model for it that can be applied at a regional level. And I think that they're also slated to come to a council meeting to provide additional information on their findings and their work and some of the work that will be working with the counties on in terms of building out a PSH model and the effectiveness and the different requirements that is needed.
Great, thank you. Almost everybody has questions before we get to the financials, so why don't we just start with Councilor Wong and go around the table.
Okay, thank you, Madam President. You know, we had a priority on capacity building, especially for providers. And I think in Washington County, I saw that there were 9 capacity building grants. Was that right, to local providers in the you know, in the other highlights? And I'm wondering kind of like what was kind of the outcomes from those, and what kind of capacity building went to, and why did Washington County do that? But or maybe other counties did, and it wasn't a specific highlight. But yeah, can you speak to just the intentional capacity building of providers across the region?
Yeah, and I will just note that all 3 counties are doing capacity building in some way or another. They're not reporting every quarter on it in terms of where they're at, right? So this quarter, Washington County utilized their Q2 report as an opportunity to highlight that work happening, but I know that the other 2 counties are doing that as well. It just looks differently in terms of how they're doing it. I know that in Washington County, they are providing grants upfront to providers. I believe it's 20 or 30,000. I need to confirm that. And the provider really gets to decide how they want to leverage the capacity building grants and how they want to support service providers. So I don't have exact outcomes for you today in terms of like, as we saw, there's 9 organizations this year that got it. So we could get some additional information on all 3 counties, their capacity building efforts and some of the outcomes that they're seeing for you all to share.
I'd be really interested in knowing what providers are spending capacity dollars on to get a sense of what the capacity need is. Just
Yeah.
like, is everyone upgrading their payroll system or whatever it might be?
Yeah, that's a great, yeah. So we could definitely get some follow-up information there and provide that to you all in terms of where they're at.
It should have been on, yeah.
Hello? Oh,
There you
good
go.
morning. Patricia Rojas, she, her pronouns, Housing Director. Thanks for letting me crash the party for a moment. Just wanting to add here that this is one of the areas that the Housing Department is building out for several reasons. As Councilors Lewis and Wong, you have both wisely pointed out some need there for a regional approach to technical assistance and capacity building, and all 3, or actually 2 of the counties have explicitly approached us requesting support for better delivering those areas of work, the technical assistance. So they have quite a bit of work to do just delivering the services and getting those contracts out the door, and have asked for our support in regionalizing technical assistance and capacity building, which is what Cole's team will be building out this year.
Okay, let's go around the table. Did you have anything?
Thanks. A couple clarification questions, or maybe on policy, maybe just on presentation. Do you have retention parameters in the data that you gave us? So if a household got permanent supportive housing assistance, do we know how long they have stayed where they were transitioned to?
Yeah, we do have retention rates, but like I said, those are collected at the 6, 9, and 12 interval after support services have stopped. So that is being provided in those reports. So I could send some follow-up information on where those at, but just note that for some of the programs, depending on ramp up, we are still kind of building towards getting all those retention rates provided.
Great. I know there's a lot of data, but it is really important to me that the services and support we're providing through the counties helps make permanent differences for the families, that they don't stay somewhere for 6 months and then fail because the services don't actually help them. So it would be helpful to know that. And the other one is about utilization of the shelter beds. Building beds is a necessary but not sufficient condition for helping people be safe and warm. Do we have utilization numbers for the beds that the counties have already had and the ones that they've created?
Not in our reports. We do not yet collect utilization of shelter beds for SHS. There are utilization numbers that are system-wide that we can access. So that would be like through the continuum of care information that is reported. But we don't have something on SHS yet. We are, as you know, continuing to improve and getting better information. And that is an area we are asking counties to begin to report on.
For me, that's an important measure of that success. If we have the beds, but nobody's sleeping in them, maybe that's not actually where we ought to be investing more money. And it could potentially directly link to, at least Multnomah County, you had in one of the bullet points up here, the highlights, that they're doing outreach. And that should affect how much their shelter beds are being utilized, if they're actually reaching the people for whom that is intended. Thanks.
Councilor Rosenthal?
Thank you, Madam Chair. First, quick question, just on that last point. Are we providing, and somebody else, are we providing SHS monies to support services for all the safe rest villages? Is that something that's pretty standard, or is that something that still has to be worked out? Because in the last one that we opened up out in Washington County, they said that they were getting SHS dollars to support the kind of services to have, people around mental health and stuff like that. Is that a complete package at this point in time? And then the larger question is, it strikes me that this whole issue is, I hate to use it, a space analogy. It's a little like a comet. You have the head and then you have the tail. We have the glow around the housing, and that's the cost of services. As it fades out, supposedly we can phase out some of those services, but we're always going to have permanent supportive housing, and so that's the tail of the comet. When will we be able to evaluate what that cost trajectory looks, first year, second year, third year, fourth year, and so forth? Will we be able to evaluate approximately that? We can estimate approximately what it costs to build 100 units of housing. It's about $335 million. Can we estimate what it's going to cost to provide services for, say, an additional 100 units of housing?
At this point, we are not. I think what we need to do to answer your question is we need to get with Rachel and take a look at the information that we have to be able to answer that question. We're not ready to answer that question today, but we're happy to look into that.
I didn't expect you to answer it. I was just wondering if we will be able to answer it at some point in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I think something to note that has been a theme that's been raised is that we're not leveled out yet in terms of reaching the baseline of the system capacity, right? So we're still scaling up. So to answer your question, really, in terms of what it's going to cost to operate at that baseline, once we reach it, we've still got a little ways to go before we get there.
Okay.
Councilor Simpson?
Thank you, Madam President. Thank you for your presentation.
No, we're not done completely yet.
Yeah.
But
it's really good to hear some good things happening, particularly from our partners in Clackamas. I like seeing the medical waiver and the future medical respite programs come online. That community paramedic program, though, that's a creative way of using those funds. Is there any chance that some of those aspects, like what we're seeing in Clackamas, can be rolled over into other counties and really in our standard regional response to houselessness? And then my second question is, on your slide, you said 18% of eviction prevention in Multnomah County, and, we overproduce beds. And so coming back to the line that Council President Peterson and Councilor Lewis were on, how are we ramping up that part of that program with our partner? Because, I think about those folks who are worrying about how they are going to pay their next bill or pay their next rent, you know, and so how are we going to accelerate that a little bit? Because I don't want us to miss out on the fact that like those folks could end up in a shelter bed that we're already overproducing. So.
Yeah, thank you for those questions. I think on that second question regarding Multnomah County, I will just note that historically, Multnomah County has exceeded their goals around eviction prevention, and those have typically come in Q3, Q4, due to the way their systems and program infrastructure is built and how they are obtaining and reaching that goal. And also just note that as part of our review, as we're looking at the Metro reports, the quarterly reports that are coming in, as those kind of questions come up around like, help me understand why you're at 18% here in terms of reaching your goal, that is conversations that we're having with Multnomah County to like understand that. So as we get further clarity and information on that, we can share that out.
Yeah, I mean, I get that Q3 it'll pick up, but right now, Q1, Q2, people are living.
Yeah.
And they kind of like need that to accelerate.
One point I'd like to add to this is that one of the main differences between Multnomah County and the other two counties is that Multnomah County has a significant amount of other funding. And so we're only seeing the eviction prevention that's being done with SHS. It could very well be that they've increased eviction prevention with other revenue sources. So I think when we look, really, it's important to think about the system and its aggregate and keeping in mind that we are only seeing a very tiny sliver, which that sliver for Clackamas and Washington is most of what they have, but that's not true for Multnomah County. So there's, I think we could get more information for you to get an idea of what the system-wide number in Multnomah County is looking like, if that's helpful.
That would be.
Putting into context.
And then my second question around standards across the region, like being able to apply some of the innovations that are coming up, which are great, but would also be a good use of spending those funds and a good way to help people.
Yeah, and I think on that front, you know, we are connecting with the three counties, you know, and the counties are sharing their shared learnings and what the different innovative programs that each of them are doing. All three counties have some version of outreach recuperative care programming. This thing that I highlighted that Clackamas County is doing is very new and something that, you know, we don't have that level of service at the other two counties. So I think as that continues to like grow and build out, we absolutely are creating those spaces to like connect and see what are the strategies that are working in one county that could support another, understanding that each county is like different and has nuances, and what might be working in one county might be a little different than others.
And will there be another service provider conference so that everybody can be on the same page as we move forward? Because until we address it, I think those need to happen regularly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that each county right now is doing with what they have capacity for a version of bringing providers together, but that is also part of the work that Patricia was describing of like we here at Metro are building out our internal team to develop, you know, something like that, potentially like a regional conference where we bring providers from all across the three counties to get further training and support and dialogue within each other.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councilor Lewis.
Sure, thank you so much. I think this is a really good start to a regular cadence of keeping our finger on the pulse of what's happening in the counties in close to real time, you know, 3 months delayed. But the opportunity here to focus on the individuals helped. That's why the reports are formatted as they are, and at the end of the day, that's the metric that we've chosen to use for the success of this program. And we're talking a lot about the texture of what those services look like and who's doing what innovation and who's chosen to use their one slide of other news to highlight which programs, not to say they're not happening in the other counties. So I think this is just a really good start, but I want to just stay focused on the people that it's helping while also needing to focus on the people who are doing the work and the ongoing need to invest in this workforce and the questions that the Tri-County Planning Body is grappling with, not only around wages, but training, recruitment, retention, because we cannot be successful in the long run without elevating those people to council level discussion as well. And y'all are part of the people doing the work, so thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thinking ditto for me. Why don't we move on and try and finish up this conversation by 12:30?
Can we bring the slide deck back up? So I will now give a brief financial update on the SHS program, and really focusing on two key financial takeaways. The first is that each county has seen significant spending growth over the last year. The chart you see on the left compares spending through quarter two in year two, which was last fiscal year, to year three, the current fiscal year. You can see that each county has doubled, or in the case of Clackamas County, quadrupled, spending in the first half of this year compared to last year. The chart on the right compares annual spending, actual amounts for year two, and the forecasted amount for year three. The full year forecast for the current year is significantly higher than last year's spending. It's important here to note that each county has budgeted more than they're forecasting to spend. This is very common when building up a new program where it's hard to predict exactly when and how things will develop. In addition, each county has budgeted to spend some of last year's carryover on one-time investments, so their budgets are actually higher than the current year revenue. In the current year, Clackamas County budgeted $95 million, but you can see on the chart on the right that they're projecting to spend $59 million. Multnomah County budgeted $195 million and is projecting to spend $131 million. And Washington County budgeted $90 million and is projecting to spend $71 million. Overall, these projections are in line with our 5-year forecast assumptions, which predicted it would take 4 to 5 years from inception for the counties to ramp up programming to this level of funding. The new and innovative programming you just heard Yesenia describe takes time to develop, and spending will increase as that programming comes online and is scaled up. Next slide. The second key financial takeaway is that spending remains below revenue by an estimated $433 million at the end of this fiscal year. As you know, one of our major challenges is that while county programs take time to build up, the tax revenue is here now. What that leads to is the gap in revenue and expense you see on this chart, which shows cumulative SHS revenue and SHS expense from inception through the end of this year's forecast. That gap represents the amount that will be carried over to next fiscal year. The counties are planning how to spend it and regularly share updates about new investments with the SHS Oversight Committee. However, it is expected to take multiple years to invest this level of carryover, or for the two lines on this graph to come closer together. Next slide. Each county and metro have a significant amount of carryover, as reflected on this chart. These balances are roughly 1 to 1.5 times the annual revenue each county is forecasted to receive. Some of this carryover is set aside as a tax stabilization reserve to be used in the event of a tax revenue downturn, and some is set aside as programmatic reserves based on the needs of county programs. The majority of it, however, is being planned for one-time investments in infrastructure and scalable programming within the next few years. With that, I will pass it back to Yesenia. I think she's got maybe one more slide to wrap it up, and then I'm happy to answer any financial questions.
Yeah, so I just wanted to wrap things up today by sharing a brief update on the work that we're doing to kind of build out our internal capacity here at Metro to provide oversight, accountability, compliance, and fidelity to the measure. One of which is hiring out this SHS quality improvement team. So thank you for your commitment and being willing to approve these positions, and I'm really happy to share that I think by the end of this week, we'll have this team fully staffed up, and we have a couple offers out this week. So 2 of the positions are really focused around data. So we have a regional data lead now on our team that's focusing on all things data, compliance, oversight, ensuring that we are getting the data that we need, evaluating it, validating it. And that will also have a data coordinator role that will support that work. And then we have 2 other positions that are on this quality improvement team, really looking at all the internal and external requirements of SHS to see, to ensure that Metro and the counties are meeting all the goals and commitments that we've placed forward in our work plan, IGAs, LIPs. So really looking at things really intentionally and deciding where we need to grow, where we need to do further oversight work and systems improvement work to ensure that we reach all the goals and requirements. Part of the work that this team will be doing, and we've actually already started to implement this, is quarterly performance review letters that we send to the counties after we get their quarterly reports, assess their outcomes, their goals, their spending, their performance that they provide us. And then we, Metro, turn that around and provide in writing feedback to them around where they're at in their spending, where they're at in reaching their goals, and that kind of positions us to have a dialogue with the counties in terms of where they're at and any support that we could provide and to ensure that they meet their goals, and then that we are in constant conversations around like spend down and ensuring that those benchmarks are met. Additionally, some of the work that this team, and this is already underway, is monitoring each of the counties. Given that we're in year 3, the programs are much more built out. We are going to start monitoring each of the counties this spring. We have contracted with a third-party consultant this year that will support us in building the infrastructure and plan for doing this. So we have started to build the plan, the policies and procedures around it, and the counties have been verbally notified at this point and will be receiving a letter formally documenting their monitoring this spring. And then additionally, I also just wanted to note that this work, the evaluation work that we've also have started to think through and connect on how we're going to be evaluating the work. There is a lot of intersections there with the work that we're doing with monitoring. So both of those things are happening together, but evaluation really looks at how effective are we being, with the different services that we're providing. So we have started, this team will also be supporting with that, building out a framework for evaluating things and starting to do that work as we wrap up this fiscal year. So with that is all that we had for you today, and we're happy to answer any additional questions that you might have.
Could you just give an example of what monitoring means on the ground?
Yeah,
'Cause I have a lot of
absolutely.
questions about that.
So for example, the SHS work plan is really specific with the type of SHS eligible uses of dollars. So monitoring looks like, hey, county, show me how are you communicating the eligible uses to providers? Is that in contract language, policies and procedures? And then how are you ensuring that SHS dollars are being spent in accordance to what we said they would be? So that, as an example, on like the financial, on the program side of things, we have a commitment to spend dollars on both population A and B. So it looks like, what is that looking like in programs? What is your monitoring with service providers looking like to ensure that we are operationalizing those definitions in the way that we intended them to be? And then provide any additional clarity that we might need as part of this monitoring process.
More about the use of funds than it is about the actual outcomes?
Yeah, so I'm just going to hop in real quick. So there's evaluation that looks at program integrity, how well it's working, what the outcomes are, is it doing what we thought it would do? That's program evaluation, right? So that's more on the quality side. Monitoring really is focused on, are you meeting the requirements and obligations of this program? So it is much more focused on things like, let's look at the financial records to make sure that our rules are in and the requirements are being upheld. It looks more, it's more procedural in nature and looking at the structure of what is delivering the program. So I think about them as very different. One is, are we doing the thing we said we would do? And the other one is, how well are we doing the thing we said we would do? So monitoring on the front end, program evaluation on the other, and both need time to be able to actually execute in terms of time necessary to build out a program or the infrastructure to be able to evaluate or to monitor something. So that's why the IGA requires us to do this beginning in year 3, which is where we're at.
I'm just getting hung up in terminology then,
Yep.
sorry.
Hopefully that helps.
We've got, I'm gonna ask Counselor Nolan, I'm just trying to not do first hand up, just to catch up. So Counselor Nolan, then Counselor Wong, and then Counselor Lewis.
Thank you. The information you presented here, in summary, was helpful and useful. It's encouraging, both for all the counties and for the work that we are doing here at Metro to provide them with technical support as well as expectations and contract requirements. And I value all of that work. But I remain troubled that the appearance, both in activity and results, doesn't comport with the urgency that I think the voters and this voter had when supporting this measure. And I don't know that I'm asking you a question. I just want to put out there that I continue to be, I continue to think we need to bring more of a wildfire or flood or other emergency attitude to this work as well. And I'll just leave it there. If you've got things that are changing that would ease my mind about this, I'd like to know it.
Let's keep talking about this question because I think we all share.
Oh, count
we
on
share
me
your,
to let you
your
know.
sense of urgency. And things are shifting. So I think there will be a lot of opportunities in the near future to think about how we can operationalize this sense of urgency and take it from something in the abstract and something that we actually implement. So I appreciate and resonate with your thoughts, and let's keep talking about that.
Okay. Right. Councilor Wong and then Councilor Lewis.
Great. Thank you. And thank you for the presentation. I think my question is actually both for Rachel and Yesenia. I read in the paper last week that Multnomah County had spent 22% of their allocation through December. And having seen kind of the numbers where Multnomah County is, creating more shelters than expected, but, maybe lagging behind in some of the other categories. Can you help explain how the county is able to deliver on those outcomes with 22% of the money spent? Does that mean that, I'm sure it's very complicated in terms of budgeting and collecting numbers, but just from an outside observer, if you're spending 22% of money and delivering more than 22% of results, does that mean you got too much money or you're not spending fast enough? Just how are we meshing that report with the numbers?
Sure. There's kind of a lot to unpack here. So I think what I would start with is when you're looking at a data point like 22% of something, it's really important what that of something is and the context around that. So I completely understand when you hear we're 6 months through the year, we're halfway through the year, we all know that's 50%. You've spent 22%. That doesn't sound right. What we've seen now in year 3 of looking at Multnomah County reports is that a lot of their expenses come in quarter 3 and quarter 4. That does not mean that the services are being provided in quarter 3 and quarter 4. It probably means that they are getting the service provider invoices, they are doing that review, and it's just not getting recorded until a little bit later. So some of it's just like normal invoice processing timing. So they've done more than 22% of the services at this point. It's just not recorded as an expense yet in the system. And that is consistent with what we've seen across all the counties, but a little bit more even at Multnomah County with the past few years. So one of the reasons that the chart that I showed you compared Q2 spending this year to Q2 spending last year is because it's up so significantly. So rather than looking at it as a percentage of budget, looking at, well, is it more than last year? Because if it's more than last year at this point, they are definitely doing more, and we see that in all 3 counties. That's why that's an important metric that we use. I think the last point that I will make is just to repeat what Patricia said earlier, that Multnomah County is unique in that they do have multiple revenue sources. So when we receive the SHS financial reports, we're looking at a portion of the work they are doing, and they have all these other ones. And I think that's definitely what's going on with the eviction prevention. So it's not that fewer people are being served this year, but fewer people are being served with SHS funding. And, you know, I also support the planning department. So I understand that when you have different types of restricted funding, you're gonna spend that most restrictive, any federal dollars first. So they are playing that puzzle game, and we don't always get that context in our reports from them. They do often speak about it when they come to the oversight committee, but I think it can make a number like that or their percentage of eviction preventions seem really odd, but if we could zoom out and get the full joint office review, it's actually not odd. It's just odd in our share of funding.
So you're saying that the county would be, because I see in many of the categories, they're less than 50% and substantially less than money spent, but you would expect a correction in quarter 3 and 4?
Potentially a correction in Q4. I can't speak to like where specifically they are on that goal, but it also could be, for example, if they have federal funding, like I'm pretty sure they have some ARPA dollars that they have to get spent. And so they may actually not meet their SHS goal in eviction prevention this year, but still meet their overall joint office goal, depending on which funding they're using first. And that is something that when Yesenia and I review their quarterly reports, we follow up with them on, like, give us the context for this. We got these reports pretty recently, so we haven't yet done that on this particular one, but that's the kind of thing that we try to dig into to understand, is it a programmatic issue that these services aren't being done, or is it a funding issue?
Is there any way you can paint that fuller picture? Because I think what we care about and what our constituents and voters care about is the actual outcome and results, and the color of money is less important.
Yeah.
But what I'm seeing here is we're lagging in all these indicators,
Right.
where that might not be the case, and the media or whomever is latching onto these narratives where they're not actually true, and then we need to be able to tell what is actually happening, and that's not coming through here. So maybe in future presentations, it's like, here's what we're spending in SHS, but here are the outcomes, and that's really what I would be interested in. Thank you.
Thank you.
I think we also need to get the data from the counties in order to tell the fuller context, which I think is part of the problem that we've been having, is that our oversight is only on SHS money, and the counties view it as such. So I think there's negotiations still going on about how to show that full context, correct?
Absolutely. There's negotiations on data sharing, but also I think what we are happy to do is take information that is already out there. So the Multnomah County does have a public dashboard that shows their progress on all funding sources. And so while imperfect, it will give you a much better idea of where SHS sits in that landscape. So we can certainly incorporate that, do some legwork to bring that data to you. And it is a significant opportunity that we see as Metro is to report on all of the funding sources, because it is a system, and SHS was really intended to bolster the system. It is really not, it doesn't exist in a vacuum. And so I think there's both avenues that we can pursue with the idea of giving you a much better picture.
All right, Councilor Lewis, and then we'll close this out.
Sure, thanks. I think it's kind of unfortunate that we're in the position of chasing spend down instead of results, and I think that's just the way that this thing launched. So I just want us to keep in mind that while the conversation is around spend down, the real thing that we as council have to deliver on are people helped and people getting from the streets into housing, whether that's housing first or housing through shelter. My thought, though, is kind of a question for Rachel. You showed those carryover numbers. Are those carryover numbers inclusive of the 5% for the Tri-County Planning Body funding sources?
Yes.
Okay. I think it's important to give them a little separate color or something, because I think that keeping those dollars prioritized for a regional system is critical. I believe that the voters actually asked us to do two things. One, run with urgency to help the people who need it the most, but two, to do systems transformation so that we are setting ourselves up in the long run as a program that works across 3 counties, that is reliable and enduring beyond the 10 years that the voters were going to fund this for. So Tri-County Planning Body has to be successful at its first 6 planks of policy, and without those dollars, it won't be. So, thank you.
Awesome, thank you. All right, thank you so much for the update. I'm sure there's more conversation. And appreciate all of the hard work that's going into outcomes for people. So, thank you. All right, we'll move on to Chief Operating Officer Communication.
Thank you, President Peterson. Just a quick update that we did hold our first stakeholder advisory table meeting on Friday. We had almost everyone who was invited in attendance. I think there were only a couple folks who weren't able to come because of family emergencies, but otherwise people showed up. The arc of the meetings, this first meeting was really defining the problem and the stakes collectively. And then we will be looking at revenue at the following meeting, drilling down into that in meeting 3, potentially breaking into some subgroups, and then returning with scenarios in meeting 4, ending with feedback on my recommendation in meeting 5. So we kicked off. I want to thank all the staff from across the agency. It was a multidisciplinary, multi-departmental effort who put together that meeting. I want to thank the folks at MRC for making sure that everybody felt welcomed and helped find their way. People parked at OCC and came all the way over here. So it was just very well done. I'm grateful to everybody for working on it and for all of our incredible stakeholders who showed up and who have huge jobs doing important things for our community in other places. So and a lot that they took 4 hours out of their day to show up. Thank you.
That's great. Is there a way to share the documents from that first meeting?
Yes, we do have additional information that I can send.
That'd be great. Thanks. All right, moving on to Counselor Communications. Anything? Counselor Nolan?
Thanks, Madam President. Just giving you a heads up that the waste fee task force has its final draft recommendations to the council in their hands. They will be taking a virtual vote, and assuming that the staff and we have accurately captured what they intended to recommend, it will be scheduled, I think, next week on council. Look for it in your mailboxes.
Great, thank you. Counselor Lewis?
Sure, thanks. It was suggested that I report back to full council based on the legislative update we had this morning, colleagues. As you probably know, the 2 big lifts for legislative session, the governor's housing package and the Measure 110 proposal are both on way to the governor for signature. Other priorities off to the governor include right to repair and the levy funding. So good work, colleagues. And then the things that are still moving through the process. This afternoon, the Senate will vote on adding urban unincorporated areas to ONA. The RSIS extension, so that's industrial sites, it's in committee this afternoon. And then we are waiting for the big Ways and Means Christmas tree bill. Arts and culture funding might be in there. Hillsborough Hops might be in there. They anticipate sine die on Friday. Good work, colleagues, advocating to our legislators.
Yeah, great short session. All right, Counselor Rosenthal.
Well, first of all, I just want to say that the Friday event, the town hall, was great. I really appreciated the enthusiasm on the part of staff, and I learned a lot about how things go on, and it's nice to have that after some years of the pandemic when we couldn't do that. So I really appreciate that. Secondly, I want to say that the Central Cultural had a big gala this weekend, which some of the council attended, but the Councilor Gonzalez was the MC and did a great job. It was a very lively event and really also a lot of fun. It was quite loud, actually, but very good. And the bidding was quite abrupt and good. And then I'll just add one note. I've heard from some of the sources in the legislature that on one of the bills that we lobbied for, the HOPS funding is not going to go through. And I
Nothing's
heard
done
that from
till
the
it's
chair.
done.
Mhm.
Nothing's done till it's done.
That's right.
Bingo.
I heard that from the chair.
Of which committee?
All right.
Wow.
Any last words for the good of the order? All right, we are adjourned. Our next regular meeting is scheduled for Thursday, March 7th, 2024 at 10:30 a.m. See you all there.